In this video we are going to talk about the Wayne Gacy. Before starting this video, like this video and subscribe to our channel for future updates. Wayne Gacy, an American serial killer, was born on March 17, 1942, in Chicago, Illinois, and died on May 10, 1994, in Statesville, Illinois. His murders of 33 boys and young men in the 1970s drew international attention and shocked his suburban Chicago community, where he was known for his sociability and clowning at charity events and children's parties. Gacy was born into a working-class household and appears to have had a typical childhood. However, he began to show signs of sadism, which led to repeated run-ins with the law in the 1960s. He was incarcerated at the Iowa State Men's Reformatory, Anamosa State Penitentiary, in 1968 after being convicted of sexually assaulting a juvenile boy and compelled to undergo psychological evaluation. He was arrested for sexual assault again after his release in 1970, while still on parole, but the charges were eventually dismissed. Gacy went on to become a pretty successful independent contractor and purchase a home in the Chicago suburbs. When one of Gacy's victims, Robert Piest, went missing in 1978, authorities discovered that Gacy was the last person to see him. Police uncovered the deaths of 29 adolescents and young men in or around Gacy's residence after obtaining a search warrant. Four other bodies were located in the nearby Des Plaines River. The part of the house had been emitting a bad odor for years, but Gacy had convinced his houseguests and his wife that it was due to moisture buildup. Gacy's claim of innocence by reason of insanity was supported by the testimony of many psychologists who diagnosed him as schizophrenic during his trial, but it was rejected by the jury, who found him guilty of all 33 murders he was charged of. He was killed by lethal injection in 1994. Gacy normally lured a single victim to his house, but on some occasions he had doubles or two victims killed in the same evening. Inside Gacy's house, his regular strategy was to bribe a teenager with alcohol, drugs, or simply gain his trust. He'd then pull out a pair of handcuffs to display a magic trick, which he'd do as part of a clowning routine. He usually shackled his own hands behind his back and then released himself quietly with the key he hid between his fingers. He then volunteered to demonstrate how to free himself from the handcuffs to his targeted victim. Gacy made the statement, "The trick is, you have to have the key," while his victim was manacled and unable to free himself. The handcuff trick was Gacy's term for the act of confining his victim. Gacy proceeded to rape and abuse his victim after restraining him. Before forcing the victim to fellate him, he would commonly sit on or straddle himself over his victim's chest. After sodomizing his hostage, Gacy tortured him by burning him with cigars, making him emulate a horse by sitting on their backs and pulling on homemade reins around their necks, and violating him with alien things such as dildos and prescription bottles. Gacy frequently manacled his hostages' ankles to a 2x4 with handcuffs attached at each end, an act inspired by the Houston mass murders, to immobilize their legs before indulging in acts of torture. He is also renowned for taunting many of his victims verbally during their abuse, and for dragging or forcing numerous victims into his bathroom, where he partially drowned them in the bathtub before repeatedly recovering them, allowing him to continue his long-term assault. When a victim requested to be killed rather than continue to be tortured, Gacy would make a statement to the effect that he would kill his victim whenever he felt like it. Gacy usually killed his victims by tying a rope tourniquet around their necks and gradually tightening it with a hammer handle. "This is the last trick," he often told his hostage, referring to the performance as the rope trick. He had read a portion of Psalm 23 as he tightened the rope around his victim's neck at least once. Although several victims died by asphyxiation from cloth gags placed far into their throats, some victims convulsed for an hour or two before dying. Except for his two final victims, all of his victims were killed between the hours of 3 o'clock and 6 a.m. Gacy generally kept his victims' remains under his bed for up to 24 hours after they died before burying them in the crawl space, where he poured quicklime to expedite their decomposition. The bodies of several of the victims were transported to his garage and embalmed before being buried. Des Plaines police got a search warrant on December 13 after suspecting Gacy of detaining Piest against his will at his residence. During the investigation of Gacy's property, multiple police badges and a 6mm Brevettata starter pistol were discovered in an office drawer, as well as a syringe and hypodermic needle in a cabinet in Gacy's bathroom. handcuffs, many books on homosexuality and pederasty with names like The Great White Swallow and Pretty Boys Must Die, 7 pornographic films, amyl nitrite capsules, and an 18-in, 46 centimeters, dildo were also discovered in Gacy's bedroom by investigators. In the northwest bedroom, a 39-inch long 2x4 with 2 holes drilled into each end, vials of Valium and atropine, and various driver's licenses were discovered. Inside the laundry room, a blue hooded parka was discovered atop a toolbox, and underwear too small for Gacy was discovered inside a bathroom cupboard. Investigators discovered a class of 1975 Maine West High School ring inscribed with the initials JAS in the northwest bedroom. A Nissan pharmacy photo receipt was also discovered in a trash container, along with a 36-in, 91 centimeters, portion of nylon rope. Gacy said he was not in Chicago when 16 of the victims were reported missing. 2 Chicago lawyers claimed in 2012 that his travel records showed he was in another state at the time of 3 of the murders, hinting he had 1 or more accomplices. Gacy, for example, had traveled to Pittsburgh on Allegheny Airlines 3 days before Robert Gilroy's abduction and returned to Chicago the day after he vanished. Robert Young, the traveling companion with whom victim Russell Nelson was visiting Chicago at the time of his disappearance in October 1977, offered different explanations of his disappearance to Nelson's family and investigators, according to authorities. Young informed Nelson's family that he failed to show up at a pub at a specified time, but that he last saw Nelson standing in a crowd outside a Chicago club, and that when his attention was diverted for a few moments, Nelson simply vanished. According to investigators, this could not have happened without Young's knowledge. Young is believed to have filed a missing persons report with Chicago police before attempting to extort money from Nelson's parents to fund a search for their son, but was unsuccessful. Young offered Nelson's 2 brothers jobs with PDM when they arrived in Chicago to look for him. Young was never called to the stand during Gacy's trial. In a third case, travel records show Gacy arrived at a scheduled job site in Michigan at 6 a.m. on September 26, 1977, the day after 19-year-old John Mowry vanished after leaving his mother's house at 10 p.m. on September 25. Mowry's roommate was a PDM employee who had previously lived with Gacy and had only moved into Mowry's flat a week before he vanished. 2 witnesses claim that Mowry's roommate recommended that he meet a man who was heading out of town 2 days before he vanished. What do you think about this video? Do let us know down in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear from us again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go.